The more I read these books, the more I think you have to be a specific kind of reader to appreciate these books, or at the very least, there is a very specific audience that's really going to get into and get heavily invested in this series. Or at the very least, there's like a specific kind of audience that's really going to connect with, really going to get invested in these particular books. I mean, the writing itself for large chunks of these books can almost seem prohibitive, at least when it comes to the normal, like everyday, very casual reader. These are the kinds of books that when I read them and get ready to review them, I feel obligated to slip into the review somewhere that these books will not be for everyone. So like I said, it just feels like there's a specific kind of reader that really will connect with these books on a very deep level. And I'm afraid I just might be that reader. Today we're talking about Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson, and my wonderful, lovely little mass market paperback of this book, because it just hurts me to own this. Anyway, as usual, spoiler warning for the video. Once I get to book 3, 4, 5 in a series, I just go full spoilers on the review. And because it's just difficult to talk about the book without spoiling at least something that came before it, I just use that as permission to go full spoilers on the whole damn thing. So if you haven't read it, please go read it and then come back later. I highly recommend in this particular book review that you do not watch this review, because there are certain things I'm going to bring up that must be experienced spoiler-free, or are best to be experienced spoiler-free. I cannot talk today, blah, 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 blah. My mouth doesn't want to work. Anyway, I want to start this review out by saying I have a real deep love for the standalone novel. I would dare to say that I actually like standalone novels even more than I like big series. There's something wonderful about sitting down with a book and the promise of a good story. And this book is going to tell you a great story, start to finish, beginning, middle, and end. There is no need to get invested in some big, long 15-book series, and do not get me wrong, I love series. I love getting invested. I love the journey. I love all of the time spent with the characters and the emotions, and we live and we grow and we move with them. But there is just something special about a good standalone novel. Now, why do you ask, am I bringing this up in the review of book 3 in a 10-book series? Because this is Malazan. And this, the more I get into it, the more this doesn't even feel like a series in the sense or in the style that I've read before. This feels more like a series of standalone novels that just happens to take place in the same universe. And sometimes the same characters show up from one of the previous books. It's just, it feels so different than a typical series to read. Now, this book, Memories of Ice, feels much more like a direct continuation of the events and the stuff that happened in the previous 2 books, more so than book 1 and 2. Those literally felt like 2 standalone books that just happened to be in the same world. But they feel like whole, complete stories in and of themselves. They could exist in a bubble that is this book. The book has its own story, its own beginning, its own middle, its own end, its own complete arc that almost feels completely independent of the rest of the series, while fitting into the series, while building off the series, while setting up the rest of the series. It is amazing what these books are able to achieve. And then this one has this world-shattering ending that feels like it could legitimately be like the end to a series in and of itself. It's that big, and it's that powerful, and it's that impactful. I mean, we lose fucking Moonspawn, for God's sake, in the end of this book, which is the floating fortress that Animander lives in. You know what Moonspawn is. Which, by the way, was absolutely great. Just the scene alone of Moonspawn coming up out of the water and like the water pouring off of it. And then like for the rest of the battle, it continues to like rain down on people. The descriptions in these books are so good. It's hard to put into words just how amazing some of the writing in this is. And you knew it was coming. Like, he mentioned way earlier in the book that Moonspawn was successfully submerged and moved into place or something like that. So you're just waiting the whole time for it to happen. Like, that whole last battle, I'm like, when's it coming? When's Moonspawn going to pop out of the water? Like, oh God, it's so good. But that's not the point. The point is, these are telling their own stories, their own complete story in and of itself, whereas some books in the end of a series feel like a cliffhanger that's really pushing you into the next book and kind of getting you eager to read the next one. This one feels like a complete conclusion to what it was doing in this one particular book. This is going to take you on one very small portion of the journey, but in and of itself, it will be so big and so climactic and will feel so complete when it's over. It is extremely unique, or at least it feels unique to me as I'm going through it, unique from other series that I have read. Now, in these reviews that I've been kind of working my way through here, I have initially talked about the writing and just how amazing the writing is. You could literally take like a random sentence from any one of these books, frame that shit, and hang it on your wall, and it would sound so intentional, and it would sound like you had a very specific reason for choosing that line, and you literally just put it on a dartboard and threw something at it. Went, that one, I guess that's the one I'm hanging up. And then in the last one, I talked about the slow manipulation and evolution of your kind of expectations of events and characters as you move through the story. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about in particular the character work. And by the time I'm done doing 10 of these books and maybe touching on 10 different things as I go through it, I might eventually have a slightly cobbled together, moderately comprehensive view of this series as a whole. This is wild to me that I have something completely different. Normally, about time book 3 comes around, I'm starting to dry up on new things to say. Not here. Holy crap. And to be honest, I kind of touched on the character work in the last one when I brought up Coltane, but I really want to talk about it a little bit more and a little bit more specifically in this one, because it really does kind of really directly tie back to my last book review. I said at one point in these reviews that I don't even know if I was physically capable of being attached to the characters on a real investment level, on an emotional level. There were so many of them, and the books are so big and they're so grand in scope. There's so many characters. I just didn't feel connected to any of them. I don't think I really had a good emotional investment in any of the characters in Gardens of the Moon. Amazing book, amazing cool shit happening. Emotional investment just wasn't really there. Then came Coltane, and I have decided that I think Steven Erikson is actually quite good at character work, but it's almost hard to see, or hard for me to describe at the very least, because it's extremely zoomed out. Actually, it's so zoomed out that you would be forgiven for reading these books and thinking that the character work was actually lacking. What I'm getting ready to say here kind of pertains to a lot more than just the character work, but that's where I'm going to kind of focus my energy, and hopefully by the end of this will all make sense. Just hang in there. Take, for example, Stephen King. He is, love him or hate him, he is a master character writer, and he's going to be real intimate with his characters, right up close and personal. You're going to be going everywhere, though. You'll be in the bathroom with these characters. You will crawl down the desert with Roland, and you're going to clean the gutters with Jack Torrance. This isn't that. We are not up and close with any of these people. We're not personal with any of them. We are watching this from a distance. We are watching things play out on the most grand and epic scale possible. We don't have time to get into these people's heads, minds, and lives. This is more like seeding. We're, like I said, taking a zoomed out approach to watching these big things happen. And then he's going to plant little seeds as you go along. Little character moment here, little conversation there, maybe a lore drop here, a little mention of who they might have been in the past, and then we see who they are in this scene here, and then we might get a hint at where they're going in the future. And before you know it, you have a deep-seated connection to a character that is now also extremely well developed. And I call it seeding because he's giving you a little drop here, a little drop there, a little drop there, and he has to do it that way because now we're with Quickben, and over here we're going to be with this character, and then we're going to be with There are so many characters that we're trying to touch on as we go through the story. It's insane. So we don't have a whole lot of time to spend here because we're going to be over here next. But before you know it, it's 700 pages later, and you are so deeply invested in what, like I said, what is now an extremely well-rounded character. And last time I didn't catch it. I'm starting to pay attention now, and I'm seeing it as it goes. But man, good stuff. Also, conversations. Lots of conversations. People talking about... Actually, that's where a lot of the weight from this comes from. I know I'm on a tangent already, but that's where a lot of the weight comes from in this book, is the conversations. Things feel more important when people talk about them than they even do sometimes when you experience them. It is amazing. It's my favorite part of the whole book. I'd rather listen to the people talk about a battle than read about the battle. Does that make sense? Anyway, good stuff. Anyway, all of this brings me to Whiskey Jack. Like you didn't know where this was going. And man, I loved Whiskey Jack at the beginning of this book. This book started and I already had a deep investment in Whiskey Jack from Gardens of the Moon. But he's just this really awesome character, this cool character that you really get invested in that book. And then in this one, we get so much more. We take that, oh, this is a cool character, and we add depth to him and all of that stuff that I was talking about. We find out who he was in the past, and we find out that when the Emperor died, Whiskey Jack could have been the Emperor, but due to the kind of man that he is, he chose not to fight that fight and to just kind of salute the new Empress and then go and accept his demotion and then accept being sent away to die on Darujistan or Genabacchus or whatever I'm trying to say. And you just get so much more of his character. And then we just get to see so much more of him and who he is. And we get to see the way that he handles his men. And we get to see the way that he interacts with Corlat. All of these little seeds planted throughout the book as we go through it. And we slowly get this better picture of who Whiskey Jack is. And not a single one of them feels unintentional. Every one of them has a purpose. And every one of them feels important. From learning about his mastery of the sword and just how good he is as a swordsman, literally one of the absolute best of the best, all the way over to his badly mended leg. And let's be honest, this about broke me more than any other scene in this entire book. And it is simultaneously doing so many things. It is... We're losing one of our characters. We have now become so deeply invested. I was so deeply invested in Whiskey Jack. I did not, for a single second, see this coming. I did not remember anything about his leg. That is kind of the most important part here, is that seed. He said it more than once, that was a badly mended leg, but I had enough pages to forget. And then when we get to the scene and he is literally, he sees his opening and it's like right there. The fight is over. The second Whiskey Jack sees it, he knows he's won. There is nothing else to do but take the final strike. He's won the fight, and he lunges forward and he plants his weight on his bad leg, and the leg gives out. And I about died. Then on top of that, it's like 2 sentences and we move on. I'm like, no. This is important. This is more important. You give this is the biggest thing that's going to happen in this entire book. You give it the respect it deserves. Damn it. You're not going to give it 2 sentences and move on. What are we doing here? It blew my mind. And it is the exact right kind of subversion of an expectation. First off, he subverts the expectation that Whiskey Jack's going to win this fight because he's seen that he has the advantage in this moment, and his leg gives out and he dies. Then he doesn't give it this big grand scene and all of the things that you think should come along with the death of one of the major characters, maybe one of the characters you're invested the most in, and instead he just gives it like 2 sentences and moves on, because that's how it works. That's the battle. That we don't have time to sit around and fucking worry about Whiskey Jack. Whiskey Jack's gone. We've got all this other shit going on over here. I mean, it's seen, and the scene is seen through the eyes of Corlat as she lays on the ground, and she can't even get a good view of it because she's too busy blinking to try to get the blood out of her eyes. It's like, what the fuck is even happening here? Insane. Now, they will circle back to Whiskey Jack after the battle is over and everything's said and done, and he will get the respect that he deserves, and we will now have some conversations about him after the fact and who he is and how much he means to everybody. And Moonspawn, the thing that is we have to sacrifice in this book, will eventually basically become his tomb, and they use it to entomb him in the water and everybody else that died. But in the moment, it's like 2 seconds, done, move, let's go. We got too much to do to worry about Whiskey Jack. He's gone, good for him, bye. And it was just, oh my God, I couldn't believe it as I was reading. I was like, first off, did that just happen? And secondly, did we really just move on? Oh man. But like I said, subversion of an expectation in the best way, the most earned and deserved way humanly possible. Now, with all this said and done, I do want to say, you can kill Whiskey Jack. That's fine. I don't care. I'll get through this. But you leave Quick Ben alone, damn it. Actually, speaking of power levels in general in all of the characters across this book is just completely insane. We are talking about a set of books where these books exist in a reality where gods exist, and these gods have the ability to enter and leave the realm and interact with people, interfere with battles, you name it. And you think that that's going to throw off these power balances and all the scales, and it's just going to fuck with everything. You're going to have maybe 1 or 2 characters that even are capable of dealing with this or standing up to the situations and the circumstances that this will then create. Think Animander Rake or Caladan Brood. And essentially, we're going to have a whole host of characters, all these other human characters, they're basically completely useless and pointless. Why are we even following them, talking about them? Why do they even exist in these low-level humans in a world where we have gods and Animander Rake? Like I said, you expect them to be essentially pointless in the story as a whole, but no. Somehow, he finds a way to make almost every single character that you come across have a use or a power or an ability or something that sets them apart, makes them stand out. Think of Quick Ben and just how vastly, overwhelmingly powerful this man is as a magic user, and his 12 souls that he somehow has contained within one body. Then there's Tok the Younger, who lost an eye, and he's just kind of like a regular fighter guy. But no, we then find out that when he lost the eye, it actually gave him a second sight, which I'm not entirely sure how his extra sight even works or any of that mess. And then let's not even get into his downward spiral of what happened to him in this book and his de-evolution to his birthing, if I know. Then you've got Silver Fox and everything that she can do. And then, of course, the continuation of the development of Perrin and the fact that he is the master of the deck and everything that he can do, which once again, I'm not even 100% sure I know what Perrin is even physically capable of. The one thing that we do know that he has the power over is he is the one who has the ability to legitimize the House of Chains and pull the crippled god onto the board and legitimize him, which is the one thing that nobody wants him to do, and the one thing that might have the most repercussions and the worst thing that could possibly happen to this entire world. But then again, it might be the one thing that has to be done more than anything else, because until he is a piece on the board, there might actually be no real way to deal with the crippled god. Anyway, the level of creativity and imagination and just everything doesn't cease to amaze me, and the way every single person really has a level of an importance. And without literally every single character in the entire thing, it feels like the whole thing could fall apart literally at any minute. And if we're going to talk about power levels, we're going to go back to my boy, Quick Ben, because this is a man a mortal. Yes, granted, he has 12 souls inside of him, but he is literally creating a plan, a man, human, to go toe-to-toe with the crippled god. And I'm over here just like, you know what? That's a bit much, Quick. I don't know what you're doing. You might want to dial that ambition back a bit. But then the Warrens get poisoned and all of this happens and is going on. And he makes like this alliance with like a little stick bug or whatever, this thing that sits on his shoulder as he goes through it so he can use his Warrens. And then at a certain point he realizes that the stick bug is Hood or is in league with Hood or something. And the second he realizes it, he literally reaches into another realm, grabs Hood, forcibly pulls him into his realm, talks to his face, and then throws him back to where he came. I'm like, dude, the fuck just happened? Like, it's insane. It's even to the point where, like, when he throws it back to his realm, Hood is like talking shit back. He's like, you realize one day you'll be mine. And Quick Ben's like, oh, I'm sure I will be, and throws him back. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you are a ballsy dude. Let me tell you. All of this then leads me to my favorite line in the entire book, which was, I warned the crippled god, you know. Told him I was stepping into his path. We knocked him back, you know. Perrin smiled to himself at the recollection. The ego of gods was as nothing to Quick Ben's. He's just so forward and direct and arrogant, but then he has the balls and the actual ability to back it up. Not only by his actual power level, which is phenomenally insane, but by his literal like cleverness and his wit, and his mind is just functioning 10 steps ahead of anybody else. It's completely insane. I just love it. I love him. I love everything about it. I love the series. I love the book. I love it all. And I don't even know. I'm not like at the end of the last one, I just kind of threw out some cool shit that happened in the book just so I could mention it. If I started mentioning the cool shit that happened in this book, we'd be here all fucking day. Although I do want to bring up real fast before I jump out of here, Itkovian and the sacrifice that he makes, taking on all of the pain of the Talana Mass and then kind of opening up a new warren or a new realm, or I don't know exactly how that worked or what happened, but kind of creating that space for them by taking their pain away from them and into himself. Dude, that was pretty impressive. But I mean, above and beyond that, I can't even start to bring up stuff that happened in this book. Like I said, we'll be here all day. I will say 10 out of 10. First one so far to receive a 10. When I'm doing series, I have a tendency to like pull back from that 10 number. Like, well, it's the third book that could get better from here, you know? And so I try to hold off. Fuck it. It's getting a 10. I don't even care. It was a perfect, maybe not perfect, but yeah. I mean, if it was Goodreads, it'd be a 5-star book. No, like there is no other rating that I can think of. It was great. Anyway, as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.